Okay, well, I would like to welcome everyone. We're going to start right now. I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight, joining Palante for our weekly Zoom workshops. We are so glad to be delivering these workshops on topics that we know our community needs. Our main goal for these workshops is to make sure that our community is empowered and educated on the resources available to them because many are not aware of the help that's out there. Which leads me into the webinar tonight, which is titled How to Apply for a Rent Reduction When Your Landlord Won't Make Repairs. As tenants, it is your right to have adequate and safe housing. And if your landlord is not providing you with this, they must be held accountable. And that's why we're here tonight. And Our very own staff member, Ryan McNamara, will be walking us step by step on this application process. Ryan has completed and succeeded in filing many rent reduction orders for our clients, and I know he cannot wait to share this information with everyone. So also, we will be having a Q&A. So we do have a question box at the bottom on your screen, or if you're looking on the phone, it says Q&A, and you should drop your questions in there, and at the end, we will answer those. Once again, there is Spanish interpretation on, so if you need the interpretation, please click on the icon below, okay? So Ryan, you can start.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ryan. I work in the legal department at Palante. And like Jakari said, I've done several rent reductions for rent stabilized people and rent controlled people. And so our plan today is to just very simply explain how you can file this complaint yourself. And just explain the process of filing it, but what it is in the simplest terms. And Jakari is going to guide us through some of the documents and the websites to use. So firstly, I would say to understand the essence of what this complaint is, you're telling the DHCR, the division, which is a state-run agency that is in charge of housing. It's called the Division of Homes and Community Renewal. You're telling them, I have problems in my rent stabilized or rent controlled apartment. It's only for those two types of apartments. There's other ways. If you have other issues in your apartment that's market rate apartment or NYCHA or some sort of co-op, there's other paths to get what you might call a rent reduction, a lowering of your rent related to conditions. But for this term, rent reduction, we're talking about this complaint just for rent stabilized and rent controlled people. So one great source of information is this document right here. It's the agency itself. It's their fact sheet about what a rent reduction is. And we're going to follow up with everyone that attended and let them either send them an email with this or put it in the chat so people can download it and read it themselves. This is great for you to just have if you submit your own complaint, you can read this to get some of the facts. And it's some parts are complicated the way they're explained, but I'll try to explain them very simply. Everything's pretty simple, but sometimes the legalese can be unnecessarily complicated. So what we're doing here is we're telling the agency, I have issues in my apartment. The agency then tells the landlord, hey, this person is complaining to us saying she has issues in her apartment. What do you say? The landlord can then reply to the agency. Sometimes the best landlord reply is they went in and fixed the issues and they have pictures and they send a reply. And then the tenant can reply as well saying, this didn't happen or this did happen. And then you get an inspector to come to your house. The inspector sees, did it happen or not? Are there still issues? And they write a determination. that's the very broad overview, but we'll get into the nitty gritty of it a little more. So on this fact sheet, it shows you the process. We'll just read process first. DHCR screens and dockets incoming complaints, serves a copy on the owner, and may inspect the conditions described. Basically what I said. And then DHCR may issue a written order reducing the rent and directing repairs. So we'll say if you're rent stabilized, which is the more common of the two, and you have issues in your apartment that include, we'll just say, for example, you have like a leaky pipes. You send off a complaint to the DHCR, which we'll do together, a mock example of it so you can see what it's like. The landlord is notified. And when the landlord's notified, if they're any good at their job, they're going to contact you to try to do the repairs that you've complained of. You must, as long as the landlord has done it properly, like requested access to your apartment properly, respectfully, said, do these times work for you? And then just barge in and demand that you let them in. You should let them into your apartment and give them an opportunity to fix the repairs, because that's what this is about. If they do the repairs, great, everything's done. No need for any of this. Sounds like you have a good landlord. And that's a common outcome, is that this puts enough pressure on the landlord to the point where they're like, oh, this tenant knows what they're doing. They filed this government complaint. And if I screw this up, the rent's going to get reduced. So I better actually do this. So that's a common outcome. A lot of tenants who complain over and over again that their landlord ignores them. I mean, how common is this? I tell the landlord, my door doesn't work. I tell the landlord the buzzer doesn't work, that my shower's broken, and they do nothing. And then I gave up. If that's you and the phone calls to your landlord don't work, this is a complaint for you. So if we'll just go quickly to the second page. So the second page is something to note here is that they say it's a good idea to have written notice, like basically a letter that you gave to your landlord saying, these are the issues, can you please fix them? It's not necessary for this complaint, but the DHCR thinks it's a good idea. That's up to you. You know, it's not needed for this complaint, but it might be, you know, if you have an understanding of your landlord and they apply to such letters, maybe it's a good idea, but that's up to you. And then we can skip around here. So actually for that line, procedures when a complaint decrease in service is filed. I already explained this, but you know, if you want to at home look over this again, that's the timeline. So definitely keep that in your mind if you need to review this stuff. But we can go to the third page. This is important, I would say, for the second line, procedures if the owner cannot obtain access to the apartment to make repairs. It's important to stress that you'll lose this complaint if you block the landlord from doing the repairs. So sometimes tenants have the goal of getting their rent reduced in mind, and they like that more than the idea of getting their apartment fixed. So they'll complain about this, but then not let their landlord in. Not a good idea, because that's the landlord loves that. Landlords love it when tenants deny access. That's their favorite defense. They say, what am I supposed to do? I can't get in, I can't fix anything. And if it's true and a landlord can prove that, then your case is over. So let them in. Now, there's rules about it. A landlord can't, like I mentioned earlier, a landlord can't just barge into your apartment. A landlord can't knock on your door and demand you let them in that day. They should email you ahead of time, call you ahead of time, Ideally, you want it in writing so that they can't make claims that you didn't let them in, these sorts of things. They should schedule the appointment ahead of time and have you consent and agree, like, yes, this time works, I'll be there at this time. Next week, Monday works for me. But yeah, you don't want to give your landlord the ability to say she denied access. But I'll say the rest of this isn't essential for this. So we'll go to the second thing. The second item I want to talk about is our checklist. And you don't need to use this, but we think it's the simplest, cleanest way to go and inspect your own apartment. And we have, this is the English version. We have a Spanish version as well. And there's forms online. But basically what you want to do is go room by room and check these boxes. Do I have any of these issues? And you get that ready because sometimes you're used to the issues in your apartment too. So you don't even think about them until you sit here with a list that asks you, are your lights dim? Maybe you're used to it. Is your paint an issue? Maybe you see all over the place. Actually, wait, yeah, this place needs to be painted. So going room by room is always a good idea. And this is our version of it. I think there's a little bit more if you scroll down a little, Chikari. Yeah, and you can, yeah, but we'll talk about this more. But next, we'll go to the actual website. So once you have all your conditions ready to go, what you want to do is go to the DHCR's service complaint portal. And again, we'll have a link to this. So it's simple enough. You can also Google it, decreased service application, DHCR, something like that in Google, but we'll send you a link as well. So we'll press continue here. It might take a second to load. Maybe it's not loading. Okay. So unfortunately, they've set a trap, which is the first thing on the complaint. So where it says all this information like street house number, street name, street type, this just doesn't work. I don't know why they set this trap. Maybe the landlords are working against us or something, but.
Hey, Ryan, 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
Can we just explain to them exactly how they can get to this website? Like if we go through Google per se.
Sure. Yeah, you want to just Google it, right? Show them the Google.
So go to Google. Well, you can type it. What are they typing on Google?
DHCR, which is the agency, decreased service application.
Okay.
And then right here, it's the third one because there's ads, I think.
So it should be the third option that says decreased services application, and it's from DHCR.
Yes.
And that's how you will get to the application if you were doing this on your own. Okay. Ryan, you can continue.
Okay, so we'll press continue. Okay, now, like I said, here's the trap that they've laid for us. The building search doesn't work. Don't even try this thing. What you have to do is go below it where it says search by building registration number. You have to find your building's registration number. Sometimes it's in your lobby, actually, believe it or not. But another way to do it is to search on a different government website, HPD's search website. So we also have a link to that, which we can send you, but you can also search in Google HPD search, and this should pop up. So for this example, we're going to do the apartment that me and Jakari are currently in. So that's Manhattan. And then the house number is 1411. And the street name is Amsterdam Avenue. So this website we're on is just gives you information about your building. It's not super relevant to this talk, but it is a useful website. So yes, where Jakari's got his cursor on it, it shows at the top right registration number or registration hashtag. That is your building registration number. We'll just copy paste that. And then the other thing to say is that this is recorded. So if you're confused by this, you can go back and watch the recording, or you can call us and we can guide you through it. But now,
Right. So the most simplest way to locate your address is, I'm just reiterating what Ryan said, is to go to HPD online, search. You're going to search your building, and it's going to take you to this page. And then at the very top, it's going to say registration number, which is your building registration number. You should then click and copy that number and then put it down into the search by building registration number section. And then once you hit that, then you will hit search. Now, if you're not working on a computer, you should, visit this website first, write that number down, either with a pen and pad or in your notes on your phone. And then once you get back to the actual application, just put it in there. Okay. So now we're going to hit search by registration number.
And luckily, this is the only annoying part of the application where they're like, you have to go to this website, go to that website. But yeah, so this is indeed our building. So we will say select. And then it reiterates the building information. Is this our current mailing address? If it's your apartment, probably is. So yes, our apartment is rent stabilized. And our move-in date, we're not going to actually submit this, so I'm going to just put in, Jakari can put it in. But you actually want to put your real move-in date there. And then it's not a co-op, it is a rent stabilized rental. Okay, continue. Applications information. This is where you put your information in. Jakari can put my information in here. The first question, tenant or tenant representative. If you're doing this yourself, you're just a tenant. So yeah, your apartment number, all very simple stuff. It's important to put these things in the number in your email because they send you confirmation, especially your email. They're going to email you confirmation that they got this, and there's like a serial number attached to it. So if you don't use email, maybe someone you live with does, so tell them about it and get their email. The next section, authorized tenant representative information. If you're doing this yourself, you don't need this because no one's representing you, so don't worry about it. Down here, do you have senior citizen rent increase exemption or SCREE? If you don't know, probably no. Do you have disability? Same thing. If you don't know what that is, you probably don't have it. Section 8 benefits, most people, we don't have it, but most people know if they have it or not. And a 7A administrator, if you don't know, you probably don't have it. So I'd say no to that one. And then this is only if you have a tenant rep, they need to upload a document saying, I give this person authority to be my tenant representative. But we're not doing that, so we don't need to upload. Okay, so this is usually auto-generated by this website. They know who your owner is already because of the building registration number. So we just confirm it, like, yep, that is the information. Managing agent information, it's optional. You can put it in. It's the people maybe that you email with, or that's on your documents that correspondence you get, but that's strictly optional.
I have a question. So what if if their building owner doesn't pop up? What should they do?
If the building owner does not auto-generate, which I haven't seen, it always does generate, go to your lease. And at the top right of your lease, there's the owner's information, generally like spelled out exactly in this order too. So nice and easy. Okay, now this is the meat and potatoes of the complaint. This is where we're actually complaining. So it asks 4 questions. The first one, this is if there's like a fire or the ceiling collapsed or drastic emergency conditions. You would click that, but we're not. We're just going to do a simple complaint about regular old conditions in this example. So we won't do the first one or the second one. And then the third one is if the owner failed to do heat or hot water. That's its own situation. Not an issue for us, but if it is for you, click the appropriate answers. Here we go. So the first question, like we talked about, did you notify the owner or agent in writing of all the conditions noted in this application? It's kind of an old question. This is from when that used to matter. They changed the rules a while ago, so it doesn't matter. So if you didn't do it, then say no. We didn't do it, so we're going to say no. And now here's what the complaint process looks like. And it's interesting, you'll see, because the checklist we showed earlier, it matches room by room how this website's set up. So it's designed to like be simple. Once you do your checklist, then you can go here and just fill in some squares. So for us, for this example, we're going to pretend that our apartment has like the typical like damp apartment problems, like there's leaky pipes and the shower doesn't work and all these pipe issues and mold and stuff. So we will say painting of apartment is an issue for this first thing, because this is a good point I want to bring up. Oftentimes your issues converge with each other. So if you have the typical water issues, your painting is messed up as well, because water coming down from the ceiling bubbles the paint, you have stains, and you want to make sure you're complaining about everything that's wrong. Because generally, if I was explaining it to a friend, I would say I have water damage. That's a normal thing to do. But you're not explaining it to a friend, you're explaining it to an inspector who only will inspect what you complain of. So you need to articulate everything that's wrong. What is the water damage? Did it cause mold? Say water damage and mold. And if you have water damage, you have paint problems now too. So add paint problems, because they won't make a determination that paint is an issue unless you complained paint is an issue. So boom, we're going to put paint of the whole apartment because we got a wet apartment everywhere. So we'll start with the kitchen. We're going to say, like, let's say our sink doesn't work well, like but we're not sure why. For all we know, we turn it on and like water dribbles out and it's ineffective. We'll say the sink, like Jakari did. We're going to say the faucet is an issue because it seems like the faucet's an issue. And we'll add low water pressure to the kitchen if we don't know what's going on. Because it's, like I said, you have to complain about the issue for them to say that there's an issue. So let's say theoretically, I turn the faucet on, just a little dribble comes out. And I say, I have a problem with my sink. It's possible and likely the inspector comes, and if he finds everything is physically fine, it's the water pressure that's the issue, he's not going to write that your sink has a problem. And he's not going to write that your faucet has a problem, because actually they're fine. The water pressure is the problem. So if you're not sure what's going on and you don't add low water pressure, you won't get the violation issued. So any sort of ambiguities like that, you want to add them in. So we'll say that's good for the kitchen, and we'll go to the bathroom. So now we're going to say, again, damp apartment. So we're going to say faucet doesn't work in the top right in our bathroom. The drain is a problem to the left, top left column. And then we're going to say, so we're going to pretend there's a stain, like there's a pipe above us that's leaking. So what that would mean is this, let's say the ceiling is sagging. That's an issue. We'll click that one in the middle. Yeah, ceiling sagging. And then to the right of that, ceiling leaking and stains. We're going to click both of them. Even though it seems redundant, we're clicking them both. And we're going to say there's walls leaks, stains towards the left. And then we'll say paint and plaster at the very end to the left. And now we're going to say mold. Now here's a very annoying thing. There is no mold option. So you have to click other and type in mold. You don't have to you want to be general too. You just say mold. Because the more general you can make it, the less the inspector will be able to narrowly say, no, you didn't complain of this. And so here, it's like maybe the inspector won't find everything is an issue because, maybe the faucet's fine again, and it's the drain that's the problem. But you want to cover your bases with the complaint. And it's not an issue for the inspector to just say, no, that's not the issue, this is. And as long as you've complained of it, you're sitting pretty. And let's see, bedrooms. We'll do a bedroom too, so let's say everything in your bedroom's fine, except when the lights don't really work great. So again, we're gonna go light fixture. If you're not sure, if you know what's wrong, then you should just pick what you know is wrong. But if you're not sure, light fixture, we'll say the light switch might be broken if you think that's the problem. And then one option, which is on our checklist, is dim lights or like weak electric current. So we can go other, and we'll say weak current, dim light, maybe / dim lights, something like this. And that covers our basis if we don't know. Usually people know or have at least 2 guesses. So, but yeah, that's a good sample. And we'll, you want to do this for every condition you have. You can complain of 10 at a time. And then they technically make after 10, they make your next complaint like its own service complaint, which they then like combine. So it doesn't really matter. It's kind of this weird system. But if you're complaining, if they say like this is too many complaints, don't worry about it. You can file another one immediately and add the other complaints you didn't add. So we'll go continue. And now here's our review page. And we just double check, make sure, yep, this is where I live. That's when I moved in. I don't have Section 8. This is my information. Make sure your email's right. You definitely want to check your email because they're going to send you a confirmation, like I said, which should have a number associated with it so you can follow up. And if something happens, you can call them and say, what's going on with blank, my docket number. And then it shows what we are actually complaining of. So make sure, another chance to make sure we complained of everything we want to cover. Then we affirm it here by typing our name, which we're not going to do right now because we're not actually making this complaint. This is just a sample. I don't want our landlord to get this really wild complaint and everything's fine. But normally you would submit this, sign your name, submit it, boom. Pretty quickly, you'll get an email saying it's been accepted. And you want to save that email for your records as well. But so now, after this, the first thing you'll get is a notice of inspection. And I have an example of what that looks like. This is the first thing you'll get from the agency. Likely, you'll get something from your landlord first, which is, hey, I saw you complained. Can I schedule, hopefully, if he's good, can I schedule you a appointment to like see what the problem is and get the super in, that kind of stuff. But for the DHCR, we'll send you a notice of inspection, which we have an example of that Jakari's pulling up as we speak. All right, here it is. I just blacked out some of the identifying information, who the tenant is. But pretty simple. It'll get mailed to you. And it just lets you know, hey, in connection to your complaint, which there's a docket number of, and it'll have it, which I blacked out, but yours will have the docket number that you know about already. Someone is going to come at this time. Here it says an inspector from the New York State Division of Housing and Community Renewal will conduct an inspection of your apartment at this date in between this time. And you bet the important thing here is that you are ready to let them in, or someone that lives there is ready to let them in. After all, this can take a while to get to this point, so you definitely don't want to be casual about it. Like once you get this letter, mark it in your calendar, make sure you're ready or a loved one is ready. But now if we go to the second page, I'd say the other important thing to mention is that where it's blacked out, it says inspector telephone. You'll get the name of your inspector and their telephone number. So if the window ends when they should have showed up, you can reach out to them. And sometimes a lot of tenants say like the inspector didn't show up. And we hear it a lot, and it does happen. And unfortunately, the tenant is often in a position where they have to bother the inspector. And that may happen, but here they're telling you like, this is how you bother them. So don't be shy if they miss their appointment, give them a call. Don't let this just fall through the wayside. But yeah, and then at the end, it'll say what the items they are going to inspect are about. So again, if let's say this person has mold in their bathroom, they won't get a violation because they didn't complain about it. It's possible, like if the mold happened, what this person should do is then file another complaint when the mold happens. Maybe they'll consolidate it or make the two cases one. And then the inspector will look for mold at that point. But if you don't complain, you won't get an inspection. So fire it off as soon as you see it if you've already made a complaint. And then the next document we'll look at is the actual order the HCR makes. This is for another tenant that I did. And so I'll say the procedure again. They complained. In this case, the landlord came and made some repairs. Actually, he attempted to repair everything. Then the inspector came, and then the inspector issued this order. So this is what the official rent reduction, everything, that's the name of the talk here. This is what a rent reduction looks like. So I'd say the important thing to first notice is issue date at the top right, 7/25/2022. And now when we go to the facts section, the very first one, the tenant filed a complaint on 12/08/2021, 8 months earlier. That's important to note. This is that's a typical turnaround. So you're not going to get this right away. The owner has time to respond, then the inspector has to finally show up. Then the inspector has to go write the report, and it has to get issued and mailed out to the parties. So it's a process. But here it is, the findings, section 2. This is the good stuff. Services not maintained. This is what the inspector is saying is a problems still. Paint apartment wide, water pressure in the bathroom. Again, this is one where there was issues with like the sink, the toilet. So we knew it was likely we're going to get something here. So we added it, and boom, it was the water pressure. Floor covering in the bathroom is a problem. Mold in the bathroom, and the apartment entry door chain is a bathroom. Is a bathroom. What am I saying? Is an issue. Okay, and services maintained. This is what the inspector is saying is either fixed or not an issue. The light fixture in the bedroom, light switch in the bedroom, no mold in the bedroom. The floor is fine in the living room. The floor is fine in the hallway, and the bedroom does not have leaks or stains. So in this instance, like I mentioned, the landlord came in, and this building had never had repairs done. It's an old building. Every single tenant there says, the super and the landlord don't do anything. As soon as we did this complaint, now the landlord's calling it the tenants. He never returns a call. As soon as he sees this, he's calling the tenants. What's going on? Like, how do I get in? Like, what do you need? Because they're trying to avoid the rent reduction. So that's the power of this complaint. And now, this is another typical story. They think they can get in and just like patch it all up real quick, and do what a lot of tenants report. Maybe some of you are in the same position. Like, I don't want my super to do it because I know he's going to do a crappy job. Well, if they do a bad job, the inspector can still find violations for it. And that's what happened here. They patched up the mold a little, they cleaned it up. But by the time the inspector comes, it's already there. Then it's a good inspector, he could tell, no, that's just a mold patch job. Boom, mold. He didn't really fix the paint and plaster. The bathroom's floor is still messed up. So even through the attempts at repairs, you can get a rent reduction. So then we'll go to the second page. And this, it's optional for the inspector. Here the inspector adds more details about like exactly what the problem is. Just kind of specifying like, oh, there's the paint, where I said paint is an issue, I'm talking specifically, there's bubbling paint in the bathroom wall and ceiling. There's sagging, crackling, bubbling paint throughout the bedroom ceiling, those kind of things. And then towards the bottom of the page is something kind of slightly interesting. We complained about the toilet bowl because again, there's a water pressure toilet issue, we're not sure. The inspector noted that the toilet bowl lever must be held down at an extended amount of time in order to flush. However, the condition observed by the inspector does not warrant the relief requested. They're basically saying like, no, it's not good enough. But even though we got the water pressure noted in the report. And so now the landlord must fix that if he wants to restore the rent. But we'll talk about that more on page 3. Here's the good stuff, the determination. Now this is a lot of words and some acronyms and some legalese. So we're not going to really go into the nitty gritty here. The summary and the important part is what happens here is the tenant now, because of the agency noting that there are repair issues, basically from the time the tenant made the complaint, technically the start of the month afterwards. So the tenant complained December, so January is the effective date of this order. So as of January 1, 2022, the tenant now pays rent of the previous lease. So your rent goes down to the level you paid before. And it's stuck that way until the owner restores the rent, it's called. Basically, the owner proves to the DHCR, none of these conditions exist anymore. I fixed them all. So there's a lot of confusion around this, and it's not the simplest thing to understand, so I'll try to give it a little time. Basically, you pay a cheaper rent until the owner proves to the agency, which can take a while, because you saw this took 8 months to just issue this order. So what does it mean for the owner to try to restore it? It could take another 8 months. You have an opportunity to respond. Maybe they didn't actually fix everything. They tried to send their super in to do a really quick job again. Takes another 8 months after that. Your rent's stuck at this like slightly lower, we'll say your rent went up $60. So now you pay $60 less. And the owner might offer you, the owner should offer you lease renewals. And the lease renewal is still entitled to increase the standard amount of a rent stabilized or rent controlled apartment, whatever it is, that percentage associated with that year. But until he restores the rent, the actual amount you pay is going to be stuck. So I hope that's clear what I'm saying. But if it's not clear, and the dates and the specifics are unclear to you, you can read this, you can read the fact sheet again, you can watch the video again, or you can just simply think my rent is going to be slightly cheaper and frozen until the issues are fixed. And now I should be clear here. There's a temptation, like I mentioned before, some tenants might have. Okay, I have my rent frozen now. I'm going to deny access to the landlord so he can't fix it. And now my rent will be stuck forever. That's a trap. Again, now the landlord has his favorite defense in the world, tenants not giving access. And especially if an inspector comes and you don't give access with the landlord there, you're destroying your case. So don't deny access, as long as the landlord does it responsibly, requesting in advance ahead of time. Ideally in writing. If he calls you to do it, tell him to email you, tell him to send you a letter, send him a letter, these sorts of things. Get it in writing, especially if you don't trust your landlord. And then give access. But I think that's about it for this, and then we'll do a Q&A. I think Jakari has some questions lined up, people asked.
Yes, I see you guys have been asking questions. Once again, we are opening the questions. So if you do have a question, please put it in the Q&A box and I will read it right now and have Ryan give you a detailed answer, okay? So I'm gonna start with the first question that we have, which is, if on your lease you have an adult with special needs, do you have additional rights? Well, that question, that question is not really related to the topic. So if you can just email us that, or give us a call at 212-491-2541, and we can help you with that. Somebody wants to know, how should they proceed if they have mold? So I guess you can just go over again, like the process with mold.
Sure. With mold, you want to let your landlord know right away. So that's always the first step, because there's a chance they just do it. Sometimes your landlord's good, sometimes they're bad, and sometimes they just ignore you. But even if they're bad and they ignore you, sometimes they'll reply. So definitely tell your landlord right away you have mold. But in relation to this, this process, you want to do, like we said, unfortunately it's not an option, so you have to do other, write in mold, specify each room that it's in, go to the box for other mold, add it to each room. And mold is an issue. It's my least favorite condition for this complaint, because sometimes there's a temptation, not even sometimes, oftentimes there's a temptation for the landlord and the super to just hide the mold. And that can mean by cleaning it. Like, you can disinfect a wall and paint it again, and the mold appears gone. And depending on the conditions of the mold, it may actually be gone, but more likely than not, it's on the other side of the drywall, or there's damp conditions that create the mold that weren't addressed. So this complaint is one way of doing it. And you're kind of at the mercy of the inspector. If it is the case where the landlord and super or maintenance people did this patch job, it can fool an inspector because they don't see mold. You have to try to communicate to them that it's a patch job. There's a leaking situation, whatever the situation is. It's on the other side of the drywall. Look at this other room. There's mold there, and it's in this room too. I swear they just patched it up, and it's, whatever the situation is. But there's other claims, like you can, if an inspector is fooled and the mold comes back, make another complaint. They take a while, but they're not that long. They're hard to actually complain. Like I do them for tenants in 10 minutes.
Okay. Okay, I hope that answered that question. The next question we have is, after filling out an application, will someone from DHER reach out to us? So I'm thinking, like maybe how long will it take, or will it be immediately after they file? Will somebody get back to them?
So immediately you should get a acknowledgement email. If you provided your email, you should pretty much immediately get notice. Sometimes they'll give you like 10. If you complain of 10 issues, they'll send an individual. I don't know why they do that. And then the next thing you'll hear from DHCR is the notice of inspection, telling you when the inspection is coming. And then the next thing you'll hear is the inspector coming. He'll call you, or he will, ring your bell. And that's how you can reach out. You can also call the DHCR with your docket number ready and inquire about the status, those kinds of things.
Okay. So we have a question in Spanish. So if you look at the bottom of the screen, if you are English speaker, please make sure you have the English interpretation on so you can hear the question being interpreted. So I will have Daniel interpret this question in English.
Absolutely.
Okay, wait,
I think
before you go, Ryan, wait, because I think some people didn't hear it.
okay.
But for the ones who didn't hear it, the question is, can I get a rent reduction if I have rodents or mice or rats or anything like that in the apartment?
Yes, you can. It's very common to get a rent reduction for that, and they can last a long time. So yeah, I think they call it vermin and they call it roaches, I think are the two names. But yeah, very common rent reduction subjects.
Okay. Okay, so the next question is, what happens when you file a complaint and the repairs that are being done are not completed and are basically bad?
Yes.
What should they do? What should a tenant do at that point?
It's very common. Oftentimes, we'll complain to 10 things. They start addressing like 7 of them. They stop, and like 3 of them, they didn't even do that good. The inspector will come and see the conditions. It's not like if you complain of paint and the landlord just applied paint to your walls, that's not good enough. They actually have to apply it to like a certain degree of professionalism. It's called unworkmanlike, whatever it is, like paint. Unworkmanlike paint job is what they'll write in their notes. Unworkmanlike plastering. We have one where the walls were an issue, the plastering of the walls. The landlord just applied drywall on top of the drywall. He didn't remove it. So now at the baseboard, the drywall is like over the baseboard and it looks bad. Boom, rent reduction. So yeah, unworkmanlike conditions, unworkmanlike product, and lack of repairs, you'll get a rent reduction for that.
Okay. This is another question related to what you said before, but about the rodents. This one is about roaches. Like if someone specifically has a roach infestation, could they apply for the decreased services and get a rent reduction possibly?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and a very common one.
Give me 1 second. Okay, this question is, my window has been broken for about 6 months and my landlord has a key to fix it. If I submit my application, would it be effective since the problem started or the day I submitted the application?
It would be not the it would be when you submit the application. It's technically the like if you submit it now, November 18th, it would be, and it goes through the process and the order is issued, it would be effective December 1st. So even though you had it for 6 years, they don't know. There's no evidence. Like maybe there is evidence, but the DHCR doesn't care. This is when you told them. That's the importance of like this workshop, like letting people know about this.
Right.
Because you want to complain right away, especially if you have a landlord that doesn't do anything.
Okay. So we have another question in Spanish. So I'm gonna give Daniel some time to read it to our Spanish listeners, then he will interpret it in English.
Absolutely. Do it tonight, do it tomorrow. And then if they patch it up, it sounds to me like it's this classic patch job situation, if I had to guess. So they could get lucky and patch it up, and the inspector comes before it happens again, and your violation is not ordered.
Okay.
But if that happens, as soon as you see mold again, file another complaint.
Okay. Someone wants to know, I guess they live in a NYCHA building. Does the rent reduction apply to NYCHA residents?
No.
Or if they need repairs?
Yes. So this process does not apply to NYCHA. NYCHA, everyone in NYCHA needs repairs. It's a very serious situation. And it's unfortunate that NYCHA is so underfunded that it's such a common issue. But what NYCHA has its own process where, they don't have a process, I should say. Oftentimes you should talk to a lawyer you should call us, talk to us about your options, because if it's bad repair issues, we can contact your landlord potentially. You might have to withhold rent, threaten litigation, these sorts of things that you would want. If you can't afford a lawyer, like free legal assistance, which we may be able to help you with. So I would definitely give us a call.
Okay. We have another question in Spanish. And Daniel is from Ms. Garcia.
Yes, that's a great question. So the landlord should do that, actually. As long as
give like a brief summary of that question.
Okay. What should I do if I have a rent reduction and the landlord still offered me a lease with the typical rent increase?
Mm-hmm.
So, unfortunately, it's a little counterintuitive. If the lease is proper, you should sign it. the lease, even though it says your rent went up, you are actually, your rent is still frozen at that lower level. And if he doesn't restore it, your rent will just be stuck there. And every year, and once he restores it, your rent will then jump to whatever your lease is currently. So
Mhm.
let's say your rent's 2,000. The year before, your rent was 1,900. So you're paying 2,000, you get a rent reduction. So now you're paying 1,900. The next year you get a lease 2,100. And it's proper, so you sign it. Every month you still pay 1,900. Next year comes new lease 22. It's proper, so you sign it and he restores the rent. Now you pay 22 to whatever the lease is. There's no more rent reduction, anything, and it's as if nothing happened.
Mhm.
Which reminds me, sorry, I should say this too. Sometimes, not even sometimes, commonly, you'll get a rent reduction and your landlord will bill you as if it doesn't exist. They'll just hope you don't know what's going on. Hope you misread it. Hope you had some help and now the help's gone, so you don't know what you're doing.
Mhm.
That's an overcharge. You're entitled to get that money back. And it's likely you're actually entitled to 3 times that money, because if the landlord did it on purpose, you can get damages against the landlord, which we can help you with. So yeah, the things to consider.
Okay. All right. The next question is, I think you might have answered this before, but it says, what if I had a long-standing back and forth with the landlord? They did repairs, but they were crappy. And my complaints have still been ignored. And we are rent stabilized.
Yes, very common. You're at the right workshop, because this is what you should do. File a rent complaint, file a decreased service complaint with the DHCR, shoot it off. Now your landlord might actually do the repairs for real, because he knows, oh, this tenant understands the legal process and knows that she can get a rent reduction. And I'm going to lose a bunch of money if I don't fix this. So for sure, fire this off. This is exactly what this is for. You know, when the landlord ignores your repeated request for repairs, tell them, you know, what's up.
Mhm. Okay, great. Hope that answered that. Um, we have another question in Spanish by Miss Molestina.
Okay, I'll repeat so the question is, I've been living here for 10 years, and every 6 months they repeat the process and it comes back again, which I assume is the same questioner talking about mold. Okay, if you haven't filed one of these complaints, do it tonight or tomorrow. If you still have the energy to do it tonight, do it tonight. If you've done this before, these complaints, give us a call. We can try to help you work out this process. But for sure, this complaint, if it's been there, like, let's say if this happens for 10 years, it sounds like it's a pretty good chance the inspector's going to see it, even if they patch it up. So theoretically, if you did this complaint 10 years ago, you'd still be stuck at 11 years ago rent, because they haven't been able to, they wouldn't have been able to restore it. That's the kind of pressure you put on them to break up the drywall, fix the pipe that's leaking, remove the moldy drywall, and patch it up, because that's going to cost them thousands of dollars, and they'll just ignore it. But if you produce a legal document that says, hey, you're going to be on the hook for dollars every single month forever until you fix this, that's the math adds up to them.
Okay. Somebody wants you to clarify again what happens after the inspector comes. So after they file the rent reduction application,
Mhm.
and the inspector comes, what happens after?
So the inspector comes and he writes notes, and you can talk to him and try to explain the situation better, but it's kind of in that inspector's hands. You're at their mercy to some degree, and you got to cross your fingers you get a good inspector. um, but at that point they go home, they go to their office, they type a report. Within maybe within the month, I think it's hard to say exactly, you should get an order issued. That's the thing we talked about that says, yes, I found these are issues, I found these are not issues. And if they find anything's an issue, your rent will get frozen. Then there's a battle that happens after that, which we're not really talking about here, but which is kind of detailed about attempts to restore, tenants' ability to challenge this, to get a reinspection, and these sorts of issues, like the back and forth that can last for a decade. But that's for another talk or for a call with us once you get to that far.
Okay, somebody wants to know about if you're a tenant and you have special needs, um, I guess, are they still able to, like, are they given the same rights to repair work? I think that question,
Yes.
right?
So for tenants with special needs, it doesn't affect this application. Although if you have DRE, Disability Rent Increase Exemption, which is a government program, you do want to check that off and let, because that's a question they ask. And if you don't have DRE, you should give us a call and we can see if we can help you get DRE, which is an unrelated program to this that can help also freeze the rent in a different way. But yeah, I would say that's, give us a call if you don't have DRE or you need help along those lines.
So this question is basically about if somebody, I guess they're assuming they have mold in their apartment, but they don't see it, but they could smell it. Because something mold does have a smell.
Mm.
They can smell the mold. Is there a way they can still report that in that application to get a rent reduction?
That's an interesting question. I don't know the answer. If I were you, like if it's in your bathroom, you smell mold in your bathroom, I would talk to your fellow tenants too to see if other people have mold issues, to see if there's issues that cause mold, like leaky pipes or water getting through the exterior of the building, or just ventilation issues. See if those are issues. See if other people have mold. But let's say specifically you smell mold in your bathroom, the most common place. I would just put mold as a condition and hope you get a good inspector and be like, I don't see it, but can't you smell it? Um, but I can't guarantee, that my guess is that that's on the inspector. I've never dealt with that personally.
Okay. Somebody wants to know, does a rent reduction only happen if you have a problem in the apartment, or does it apply to the building, to the whole, basically, can they get a rent reduction if something's wrong with the whole building, not necessarily their apartment?
Yeah, that's a great question. The answer is yes, but it's a different application. There's decreased service, which is the one we did. That's individuals. And then there's building wide service complaint. That's kind of like a whole nother talk. It's similar, but different. And it involves like organizing with tenants. Like you don't even need to really organize that much, but you need their signature. You want everyone in the building to sign up and agree to your list of complaints, like the elevator's busted, the intercom goes in and out, the entry door is like doesn't work, mail is a problem, those sorts of things. Get everyone's signature, file this building wide off, and then everyone who signed on, if they find these complaints, every single person that signed on gets a rent reduction. So that's really how you get the landlord on the big ticket items, like an elevator that hasn't worked. He's like not going to spend the 40 grand or 50, whatever it is to fix it. Well, if you get everyone in the building a rent reduction, you may. But I think that may be a whole nother talk because it's a big subject. But if you're really interested, definitely give us a call. We can talk about it.
Or if we have multiple problems, do we make separate applications or can we include them all in one?
You can include a lot in one. At some point, you reach a limit, and then you just file another complaint immediately after, and the agency itself will most likely make those complaints into one. But I think it's at like 30 or something. I'm not exactly sure. But yeah, you can, fit as many complaints as you can in there. And then when they tell you to stop, just file another one.
Okay. We have a question. If I had a bad inspector, where do you go to report that inspector?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I'm not sure, honestly. I don't know a good answer because it definitely happens. Every once in a while, the inspectors get busted doing corrupt things too, but I'm not sure the process for that. Sorry, you could,
All right.
email us or give us a call, but I can't answer that too good.
Okay. Someone says, what if the repairs are done, but the landlord tells me he will not renew my lease at the time of renewal?
That's a good question. Sometimes people fear retaliation from their landlord. If you're rent stabilized or rent controlled, you have nothing to fear. As long as you don't violate the terms of your lease by doing something like not paying rent or, selling drugs in your apartment or like breaking walls down, really, wild things, you're entitled to a lease renewal. And if you do a legal process like this, inform the city of issues in your apartment, anything like sue the landlord for repair issues, anything like this, that's, a threat by them to not renew your lease is a form of harassment and it's illegal. And then you give us a call too, because we can do something called a lease renewal complaint for you, where we bring those issues up and say the landlord failed to offer a lease renewal. And that's pretty easy stuff. So I wouldn't be stressed about that at all.
We have another question in Spanish from Galaxy 821. You can read Gascar. Gascar. You can read it.
Okay. So we can, so as relates to this complaint, if you need help with a complaint too, if it's too difficult to understand or you're not savvy with computers, we can help you with that too. So definitely give us a call. And we'll provide our number. Okay, yeah, sure. Our number is 212-491-2541. And me and Jakari are the only ones that don't speak Spanish here. So just cross your fingers you don't get us to pick it up. I'm just kidding. We'll transfer to a Spanish speaker.
Um, okay, I see one more question we're gonna do in Spanish by again. Let me see. Gre- Gregorio.
um, okay, that's another subject, but I will answer it quickly, which is if you're rent stabilized, that is not a legal thing, and the process you should look into is a rent overcharge. But definitely collect whatever like statements you have from your landlord about that, and bring that to a lawyer's attention, including giving us a call.
Okay, one more final question. So when the rent reduction is approved, does it take into effect immediately, and then will it be reflected on your rent statement for the next month? Like, would it show this is
That's a great question. It depends on your landlord. So many landlords will try to pretend this never happened, even though they got all the papers, they called you and tried to set up an appointment to do the repairs. They got their guy in to repair it. They replied to the DHCR. Now they're going to pretend like they don't know what you're talking about once the rent's lowered. So if they do that and they charge you your unfrozen rent, it's a rent overcharge, and you may be entitled to 3 times the damage. So if they overcharging you $70 every month, you may be entitled to $210 through this process of demonstrating that no, he knows what he's doing, and this is an illegal overcharge based off of this rent reduction. So yeah, definitely let us know if that's the issue, because that's always a fun one. Landlords hate the rent overcharge complaints, but we love them.
Okay, so I think that make sure. Yeah, I think that wrap. Wait. Okay, one more question. The last question. It says, after a recent test, all my walls have lead. Does this mean the walls and ceilings will be renovated? Like, yeah, would it be renovated?
So if you have lead paint as a issue, I would also call. You got it tested, so that makes me think like HPD was involved already. So I'm guessing you called 311 about it, and that's why it was tested. But they should issue a violation on the landlord, and he should be coordinating pretty quickly to get rid of it. And that would be, by getting rid of. It's not necessarily that he's going to renovate your walls, if that was the question, but strip it of the lead paint and repaint it and test it again to make sure there's no lead. Especially, I think the major concern is if there's a child under 6, I believe is the cutoff. So if that's the case too, you definitely want to bring that to your landlord's attention, and whoever the inspector was, that's a complaint with HPD too. You let them know like there's a child under 6. And then if nothing gets repaired, you give us a call, and litigation is an option, those sorts of things.
Mhm. Okay. All right. So yeah, that will conclude the questions for tonight. I want to thank Ryan for being so detailed in all his responses and for presenting tonight. I know everyone watching has learned so much in regards to rent reductions. Tonight, I think the takeaway for tonight is as tenants, it's your right to have safe housing. So no one should be exposed or be succumb to live to hazardous conditions, because when your place that you call home isn't right, it really affects you mentally. And Palante wants to make sure that all landlords are held accountable, and applications that we discussed tonight, as far as like the rent reduction application where you report your repairs, that holds them accountable and also, gets you a rent reduction.